The Complete Grimm's Fairy Tales. Clever Elsie. There was once a man who had a daughter who was called Clever Elsie. And when she'd grown up, her father said, "We will get her married." "Yes," said her mother, "if only someone would come and have her." At length a man came from a distance who wooed her, and who was called Hans. But he stipulated that Clever Elsie should be really smart. "Oh," said the father, "she has plenty of good sense." And the mother said, "Oh, she can see the wind coming up the street and hear flies coughing." "Well," said Hans, "if she's not really smart, I won't have her." And when they were sitting at the dinner and eaten, the mother said, "Elsie, go into the cellar and fetch some beer." Then Clever Elsie took the pitcher from the wall and went into the cellar and tapped the lid briskly as she went, so that the time might not appear so long. When she was below, she fetched herself a chair and set it before the barrel so as no need to stoop, and she did not hurt her back or do herself any unexpected injury. Then she placed the can before her and turned the tap, and while the beer was running, she would not let her eyes be idle, but looked up at the wall, and after much peering here and there, she saw a pickaxe exactly above her, which the masons had accidentally left there. Then Clever Elsie began to weep, and said, "If I get Hans, and we have a child, and he grows big, we can send him into the cellar here to draw beer, and then the pickaxe will fall on his head and will kill him." Then she sat and wept and screamed with all the strength of her body over the misfortune that lay before her. Those upstairs waved for the drink, but Clever Elsie still did not come. Then the woman said to the servant, "Just go down into the cellar and see where Elsie is." The maid went down and found her sitting in front of the barrel, screaming loudly. "Elsie, why do you weep?" asked the maid. "Ah," she answered, "have I not reason to weep? If I get Hans, and we have a child, and he grows big, and he is to draw beer from here, the pickaxe will perhaps fall on his head and kill him." Then the maid said, "What a clever Elsie we have," and sat down and beside her began to leap loudly over the misfortune. After a while, as the maid did not come back, and those upstairs were thirsty for the beer, the man said to the boy, "Just go down into the cellar and see where Elsie and the girl are." The boy went down, and there sat Clever Elsie and the girl both weeping together. Then he asked, "Why are you weeping?" "Ah," said Elsie, "have I not reason to weep? If I get Hans, and we have a child, and he grows big, and comes here to draw beer, the pickaxe will fall on his head and kill him." Then the boy said, "What a clever Elsie we have," and sat down with her, and likewise began to howl loudly. Upstairs they waited for the boy, but as he did not return, and the man said to the woman, "Just go down into the cellar and see where Elsie is." The woman went down and found all three in the midst of their lamentations, and inquired as to what was the cause. Then Elsie told her about their future child to be killed by the pickaxe when it grew big and had to come and draw beer. Then the mother said likewise, "What a clever Elsie we have," and sat down and wept with them. The man upstairs waited a short time, but his wife did not come back, and his thirst grew ever greater. He said, "I must go into the cellar myself and see where Elsie is." But when they got to the cellar and they were all sitting together crying, he heard the reason that Elsie's child was the cause, and that Elsie perhaps bringing one into the world some day who might be killed by the pickaxe, he should happen to be sitting beneath it, drawing beer, just as at the very time it fell down. He cried, "Oh, what a clever Elsie we have!" and sat down and likewise wept with them. The bridegroom stayed upstairs alone for a long time. Then no one would come back, he thought. They must be waiting for me below. I must go down there and see what they are all about. When he got down, and the five of them were sitting there screaming, lamenting piously, each outdoing the other. "What misfortune has happened then?" asked he. "Ah, dear Hans, if we marry each other and have a child, and he is big, and perhaps we send him down here to draw something to drink, then the pickaxe which has been left up there might dash his brains out if it were to fall down. So have we not reason to weep?" "Come, come," said Hans. "More understanding than that is not needed for my household. As you are such a clever Elsie, I will have you." And he seized her hand and took her upstairs with him and married her. After Hans had had her for some time, he said, "Wife, I am going to work to earn some money for us. Go into the field and cut the corn so that we may have some bread." "Yes, dear Hans, I'll do that." And Hans had gone away and cooked for herself a good deal of broth and took it out with her into the field. When she came to the field, she first said to herself, "What shall I do? Shall I cut first, or shall I eat first? Or, yes, which shall I do?" Then she drank a cup of broth, and then when she was fully satisfied, she said once more, "What shall I do? Shall I cut first, or shall I sleep first? I will sleep first." Then she lay down among the corn and fell asleep. Hans had been at home for a long time, but Elsie did not come. Then he said, "What a clever Elsie I have. She is so industrious, she does not even come home to eat." But when evening came and she still stayed away, Hans went out to see what she had cut. But nothing was cut, and she was lying in the corn asleep. Then Hans hastened her home and brought a fowler's net with little bells that hung around it about her, and she was still sleeping. Then ran home, shut the house door, and sat down in his chair and worked. At length, when it was quite dark, clever Elsie awoke, and when she got up, there was a jingling all around her, and the bells rang at each step she took. Then she was alarmed, and she became uncertain whether she was really clever Elsie or not, and said, "Is it I? Is it, or am I not?" But she knew not what answer to make this, and stood for a time in doubt. And at length she thought, "I will go home and ask if I be, or if I am not, and they will know for sure." She ran to the door of her own house, but it was shut, and she knocked at the window and cried, "Hans, is Elsie within?" "Yes," answered Hans, "she is within." Hereupon she was terrified, and said, "Ah, heavens, then it is not I," and went to another door. But when the people heard the jingling of the bells, they would not open it, and she could get in nowhere. Then she ran out of the village, and no one has ever seen her since.